Welcome back to Squawk Box. China refuting Washington's claim that it violated a trade agreement negotiated last month and instead is accusing the U.S. of breaching terms of the deal. Joining us right now is Representative LaHood. He sits on the House Select Committee on China and the Intelligence and Ways and Means Committees. He's voted in support of the House's version of the reconciliation bill. So let's start there. What do you think is really going to happen here?
Well, let's remember, no one thought we would pass it in the House by Memorial Day. We did that. And I give a lot of credit to our leadership, Chairman Jason Smith. We've worked for over a year to get this bill done. The one big, beautiful bill got done, and now it's in the Senate's hands. Not a perfect bill, but it does remarkable work in the tax space and building off the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that created the best economy in my lifetime. Making permanent a number of those provisions was important. And the last point is, remember, if we do nothing, Andrew, we'll have $4.5 trillion of tax increases at the end of this year.
Okay, but what do you make of the idea that we are just adding debt upon debt upon debt? The idea that this is a fiscally responsible bill, and I put that in air quotes, is very hard to argue.
Well, I think they said the same things when we passed the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And again, we moved 6.5 million people out of poverty, created the best economy in my lifetime. The CBO estimates that growth will be at 1.8. Ours is at 2.8. We've never had a period that it hasn't been over 2% growth. So again, CBO, I think, has faulty information on putting the growth rate at 1.8.
But I think, I mean, look, part of this issue is that for at least the last administration, there was an argument made that people were, spending money wildly, right? And that there was this argument that this administration was coming in, this new Congress was coming in, this new Senate was coming in with a sort of very fiscally responsible approach. I think the bond market is suggesting they don't really like this.
Well, I would say a couple things on that. I mean, this is a tax bill, right? So we're focused on taxes. And I think what you're going to see this week, a number of the DOGE cuts are going to come before the Congress, and a rescission bill. That's going to be a part of this. But there's no doubt this will reverse the trajectory if we get the growth that we think we'll get with this at 2.8% from the $36 trillion.
What do you make of the fact? I mean, even an Elon Musk would say, I mean, he said it on TV, not happy.
Well, I would disagree with Elon in the sense that he doesn't understand how the tax bill works. Again, look at the statistics from 2017, right? Higher wages, lowest unemployment, 6.5 million people moved out of poverty. And think about the provisions we have in here, 199A, bonus depreciation, estate tax, R&D tax credit. This is going to be rocket fuel for the economy.
If you get 3% GDP, Bessent was on, and when he says things, I do listen to him. And he says, we're at 7% of deficit to GDP. This eventually, when he leaves, it'll be at 3%. It's hard to imagine, but he's saying that the CBO grossly underestimates the possibility for GDP growth.
I agree with that, and I think they've had a track record of doing that also. If you think about it, Joe, there's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines waiting to be spent in private equity, in banks, and on personal level. They're waiting to see predictability and certainty in the economy. That's what this bill does. It gives predictability and certainty, and that's frankly what people want, particularly with...
You're going to need GDP of 3%.
Yes. And I think, listen, we're at 2.8 is what we predict in our bill. I think it could go much higher than that.
And that would, and I'm not sure... I just don't think the bond market is...
I got a tax
The bond market is not freaked out yet.
It's my bugaboo, so I'll just ask. And it's a small number, but carried interest. Can you explain to me, in like I'm 5, why carried interest remains ongoing, not touched by this bill?
Well, again, we can get into details of that, Andrew, but we had a lot of discussion in the Ways and Means Committee. The Senate will talk about this now. But if you look at what private equity and a number of venture capitalists have done in this space in terms of creating more economic growth, right? Letting the private sector flourish and prosper. I think you start with the premise that we're not going to grow the economy with more government spending. We have to let the private sector flourish and grow. And I think the carried interest part of that, we've seen direct results from that have benefited the economy and created more jobs.
Just so we're on the same page, the folks who are benefiting from that are not the folks who are investing their own money. This is not to benefit the investors. This is to.
But the overall industry is a positive.
So my question is: you think you need to incentivize the people who work in private equity because they're not incentivized enough.
Well,
the government has, because effectively, that's what we're doing. We're saying that people who work in private equity, people maybe who work in certain parts of oil and gas, people who work in certain parts of real estate, need to be incentivized to do that work. Meaning, like, and you would say you don't need to incentivize teachers, you don't need to incentivize doctors or anybody else, but that issue, real estate, oil, gas, private equity, venture capital, those people need a special incentive to actually take those jobs, and that they wouldn't take those jobs and those smart people wouldn't do that work otherwise. Is that your position?
Well, I wouldn't put it exactly like that, but what I think we've seen is this provision being in place has allowed private equity to go in and help take over businesses that are distressed and otherwise. I've seen it throughout the Midwest and many of my counties and other places where private equity has come in and created more jobs and economic opportunity. And I think the argument can be made by having this provision in there has allowed for more economic growth.
That's what people always say. And you're never going to get the answer you want. They're going to say that it's worked really well and don't touch it. They're not going to say it's fair. They're not going to say that it needs to be incentivized. They're not going to say any of those things. You're never going to get that answer, no matter what you say to these poor people that come on. You're never going to get that answer. They're going to say it's benefited the overall economy. Why mess with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we went round and round on this, looked at it extensively.
Trump wanted it. Congressman Trump wanted it. He was ready.
It was a collective decision we came to that it benefits the economy and benefits taxpayers more to have it in there.
Congressman, I want to thank you for joining us this morning.
But the president's ready to call it quits on that.
I think he is, right?
Yeah.
And getting the one big, beautiful bill done was an accomplishment in the House.
No, he's ready to call it quits on the carried interest.
I agree with that.
But he
Yes.
couldn't get it done, I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't know whether, you know what goes on behind the scenes. I don't.
Tell us what goes on behind the scenes.
Well, we've been open and transparent on the Ways and Means Committee with this bill. Again, I give Chairman Smith a lot of credit on that. We've had a number of open hearings, and over the last year here, we've had public hearings. We've had all across the country. And again, I think people are well aware of what this can do. And remember what we're doing for working families. No tax on tips,
right.
No tax on overtime. What we've done for seniors in the Social Security space, no tax on auto loans. So to say this is benefiting the rich is just not, in fact, true. It's benefiting working families because of those provisions that President Trump ran on.
I'm just wondering what the Senate does and how different that is. Because President Trump's saying go for it to the Senate after he finally got the House.
Well,
you figure you can get it passed again in the House.
I do. Now, as Speaker Johnson has said, you can't. It's a delicate balance in the House and how we got there. So I don't think you can tweak it too much in terms of moving forward. But again, the accomplishment we got, no one thought we'd get it done by Memorial Day. We got it done. Now the Senate needs to get it done by 4th of July.
Senator Mullen's going to be on in a little while. We'll ask him how much they're going to mess with this.
I think he'll tell you they're going to get it done by the 4th of July.
They're going to mess with it a lot.
And then you'll have
I hope not.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congressman. Good.